white ball starts breaking. Slowly and slowly, it starts breaking. And over time, it explodes, and we see the universe continue where it was. Now restart. Just continue. This time, people remember what happened about the whole thing, the last video. The villains are back. Well, at least some of them. Some new villains have entered. Some have been killed or missing. Spider-Man doesn't really know what's happening either. He doesn't know. He doesn't know what to do. Quickly calls his ex, Gwen Stacy. He quickly calls her and asks her what he should do. She says that since there might be a chance that other multiverses or other universes have merged in here, that at least something was left here that was supposed to be in another one. So when this whole thing was fixed, a couple of remnants from other universes could have been left here. And then we see it. Devil's Breath. A version of it. This one is weird. Seems like that Oscorp managed to find this and contain it. But it was, of course, stolen. But not by who you think it would be. Not by who you think it would be. It was stolen by Osborn himself. Because want to know what happens? He realizes that the only way to stop being a target and stop being killed is to join the people who are trying to kill him. So then that way they can unleash terror upon the city. So that's what he does. He steals all the tech from Oscorp and Sable and National, and he manages to break into Roxxon. He gets the blueprints for a new project that we're working on, and he makes his own suit. It's a modified version. Basically, it's just a robot. How do I say this? Well, first of all, it's just a regular costume, but more technologically advanced. And he escapes, and then he finds another universe's hoverboard for Green Goblin, and he fixes it and upgrades it, and then he joins them. And then they go to an abandoned Fisk Tower. But Spider-Man already knows about the moves that they're doing. Right? He knows. Because he talked to the Avengers and they decided to help him. So Stark just used his satellites to track the most recent locations. So he followed them there, and before they could even start their plan, he immediately gets the Devil's Breath serum. But instead of trying to fight them, he hides. He calls in Silver Sable to do a huge distraction while he tries to get rid of it. That's what happens. Sable and Roxxon and their team and Osborn's self-security forces that they had made just in case Sable wanted to leave join in, and they are doing a decent job at stopping all the villains. There's Carnage mixed with Venom there. Martin Lee's there. Dr. Octopus is there. Green Goblin is there. But you know that villain I mentioned, the one that actually helped Spider-Man with that crane, whatever, in the last one, he helped Spider-Man again. Okay? Because what he does is that he gives Spider-Man a new add-on for his multiversal watch. It's Spider-Man doesn't know if he can trust him, so he double checks the device, putting in a lot of antiviruses, checking the software over and over again, and no threats were detected. But just in case, he made an adapter where the chip would go into his watch. So if ever something was going bad and that the Raven Hunter tried to use that adapter against Spider-Man, he could eject it out. And it allows him to travel way faster. It allows his web shooters to have infinite ammo while he's traveling through universes, and it also allows him to have infinite webbing for a short amount of period whenever he wants. It does this by bending the multiverse and changing some aspects. So basically, it took Tobey Maguire's supply of web shooters, infinite supply, because it was biological, and it took that infinite supply part and merges it with this version's web shooters. But that does mean, the thing is, it also took another aspect on incident. Tobey Maguire's movies, when the web shooters stopped working, it also took that aspect. But instead of trying to fix that, the Raven Hunter just quickly made an anti-thing, so it could be explained as a cooldown, something. So yeah. There's also a new villain, Shocker mixed with what was it? It was Shocker mixed with Toxin from another universe. It's this universe's Shocker mixed with another universe's Toxin, and this one is also like Green Goblin, tech advanced, really tech advanced. So basically, it can transform its arm and upgrade it to make it bigger and form that technology around it, so that when he hits the ground, it does a big impact, and it also sends that purple electricity all over to the ground. And he can also do that with his feet, so whenever he jumps from a big height and he lands, can send a purple electricity through the ground. You're like stuff like that. And this, and also Scarecrow is here. He actually is the one who helps. What was his name? Well, I keep on forgetting the names. There's so many. No, not the lizard. No, it's that one that has a long tail that has poison on it. That one, I forgot the name, but he actually upgrades that toxin, so it's even more powerful, and it's harder to make a cure for it. But the thing is that Spider-Man did have a cure for the past version, and he has it in himself. So it will subsidize some of the effects, not all of them. It'll just make them slightly less worse. Okay. So yeah, and then Spider-Man has an idea. He remembers from his time in that white orb that there are some universes that are glitched out, broken. Some universes that were either destroyed by an entity or somehow destroyed, left beyond chaos, that are just floating in the multiverse, that are just there broken. So he travels to one of those universes, but he quickly activates one of his commands. Basically, if he ever had to go to that universe, it would put on a metallic proof version. Basically, he took some substances from that universe and gave it to some of his nanotech. some of the nanotech he had, right? So then that way he could create a chemical force field around his body so that way he wouldn't get any disease or anything. So he quickly activates that and gets his watch and then goes to one of those universes. And then he sees it. This vision of the Sinisters are weird. Basically, the lizard is a nightmarish creature with long black nails, yellow sharp teeth with multiple layers, multiple long eyes and multiple red pupils. And its tail has a little wrecking ball attached to it. He can also breathe fire. But this version is actually made out of the ruined chaos energy. No, not Sonic. Basically, this universe was destroyed by a black matter orb, which turned the universe into black matter, and the only people who managed to survive were in fact the villains. But Dr. Octopus knew that eventually they would die unless they fused with the energy, so that's what they did. So their body's made out of that substance now. So yeah. Dr. Octopus has nightmarish teeth. He has multiple binoculars attached all over his body. His tentacles are actually really sharp, and they have three like big claws that close like. And the same is for the rest. And he decides what he can do. Spider-Man knows what he can do. He manages to outsmart the lizard. And he manages to get a substance. And he manages to create a cure for it while he's quickly dodging all of them. So he quickly gets a vial of that and then mixes it with, this version, the devil's breath. This one isn't a gas. It's not a gas. Basically, when it's in the bottle, it's a liquid. But whenever it gets released, it turns into a gas. Which means if you open the side of it to pour something in, it won't get out. So he pours that cure in, and then he closes it, and then continues to dodge he continues to dodge because he did calculations and figured out how long it would take for that cure to mix in. And then when he thinks it's been enough time, they group up, right? They merge into one entity, and it's giant. And he goes to Spider-Man goes to its head, and then it hits it in. He puts a couple grenades in there, and then he throws it in, and then he in their head, and then he activates it. And then the black energy turns into a liquid, and then it starts sliding down, covering the universe. Spider-Man knows what's gonna happen. This black energy is gonna completely control this universe. So it could move walls, it could crush ceilings, it could create new entities out of nothing. So he quickly gets out of there. But immediately when he gets out of that universe, a car is thrown at him, and he stops it without even moving, and then he throws it back at Dr. Octopus. And Dr. Octopus, of course, throws it at one of the support beams at the Fisk Tower. And Spider-Man already knows their plan. Their plan is to battle, but whenever they get the chance, hit one of the support beams. So then that way, the heroes will be more focused on saving people. So Spider-Man calls for multiple big distractions that spread out the villains. And then he quickly evacuates everyone. He does calculations and figures out how big the damage will be, and he evacuates everybody there, and also in an additional 2-mile radius just to make sure. And then they battle. And Spider-Man figures out that the building collapsing will actually do them favors because Oscorp, Roxxon, and Sable teamed up, and they managed to create a new tech. Basically, it does need a bunch of cooldown, but once it's ready to use, all you have to do is press down, put your hand in this motion, and then it'll teleport you out into a nearby Sable jet. So then that way, if the building is collapsing, all of them could just be like, and then get out of there. So he also calls for way more jets too, just in case. And he realizes that he can't fight them all at once. So he makes the jets stand on standby while he gets extra help. But then he realizes that Dr. Octopus is managing to outsmart all of them. So he forces them to evacuate, and then he single-handedly handles them. First of all, it was pretty easy, but when Green Goblin tried to do that classic hit Spider-Man with that jet thing, he swings it and hits it at Electro. And basically what this does is that it activates a security thing Dr. Octopus put in, a protocol, where if Electro tried to turn on them, basically it would play a lot of high-powered screaming noises and EMFI radios and signals, along with activating all the bombs and hacking the nearby water systems to aim it at him. And this manages to get rid of Toxin. Because of this, Electro falls down, but his electricity manages to save him. And then we see Toxin go down in a sewer. And then we also see Electro trying to go back to the fight, but his suit is damaged. It barely works. And even then, it has random outlashes of electricity. So he quickly calls in some backup Sable and Roxxon teams, and then has the Oscorp security team be on standby to make sure nothing bad happens, and they manage to catch him. And then Spider-Man's talking to them while battling the rest of the foes, and he realizes that that Electro and Toxin could have a link, so he could just escape out of jail. So what he tells them to do is that he tells them to put him in the location nobody would look for until this fight is over. His plan is to use his multiversal watch to put Electro in another multiverse jail, so there's no way Toxin could get in there and break Electro out. And Spider-Man's actually doing a pretty good job at fighting them. Carnage and Venom aren't too much of a problem because they need a human host, so they are more in the liquid form. They try to do like attacks, like spear attacks and stuff like that, to try and stop Spider-Man, but obviously he dodges them. And then he realizes what's about to happen. Okay? How do I say this? Is Carnage is gonna merge with Dr. Octopus. And then we see Iron Man fly in And then we see him grab Dr. Octopus and fly off. But then he doesn't expect this. But Dr. Octopus manages to hack into Tony Stark's suit, and then they go flying down. He quickly contacts Tony Stark while he's fighting Carnage and Venom. And he can barely hear him. Most of the suit is damaged, right? Like, they hit a lot of buildings, and then they were hit, and then there was an explosion. And then he realizes that Dr. Octopus might use that tech. So he asks Tony Stark if he's away from his tech, and he says yes. But Dr. Octopus has it in his other hand. So Spider-Man uses his protocol, his failsafe. Basically, it was a part of a long-abolished program that Spider-Man picked up from the FBI to counter any of the Avengers in case they turned evil or went against the CIA or the FBI. Okay? So he activates a voice command, and it actually works, which he thought wouldn't, and it self-destructs the suit. Right? It self-destructs it, but it also hits the Neuralink. Basically, the explosion of electricity went into the in Dr. Octopus's brain and malfunctioned the chip that would connect his arms together. Right? So then Iron Man quickly gets out of there, and Spider-Man he tells the rest of the Avengers to stay out of this. Stay out of it. It's too dangerous. And he tells the rest of the Avengers, look, Spider-Man knows what he's doing. He has fighting these people before. We haven't. He knows all their moves and what they're probably gonna do. He managed to outsmart them by getting rid of Devil's Breath. He knows what he's doing. And when I tried to help, it cost me my entire suit and damaged my arm. So we need to stay out of this. He also points at Thor and says, you need to stay out the most, because Carnage could morph with you and he would be even more powerful, because then he would have one of his weaknesses covered. Whenever he merges with someone, Iron Man has a theory that whenever Carnage merges with someone, he can take aspects of their body or powers if they have any. Which means that if Carnage manages to fuse with Thor, he could take the aspect of Thor being immune to any electricity, well, this version, and multiply it and put it into his own body. So when he escapes, electricity won't do anything to him. But yeah, they did a lot of damage on the building. Like, a lot of stuff is falling out and stuff. And then Spider-Man decides to use it. While he's dodging Carnage, hacks into Green Goblin's jet. And it's on one of the support beams, and he activates the self-destruct, which explodes a part of the building while it's falling down, and Carnage is there, but he's too distracted by the other protocol. Spider-Man threw a fuse box at him, and then he gets crushed. Carnage and Venom get crushed by the building. But of course they survive. And what happened that's just shocking, they take, basically there's parts of them attached to the rock. So what they do is that they make a body out of rock. And they can fully control it too. So now they actually have a fighting chance against Spider-Man. Right? Oh, well, he thinks at least. Basically, it's one of Scarecrow's upgrades to, whatever his name was that it can now put a poison in any living organism, which includes venom and carnage. So he drops down and tries to hit Spider-Man, but Spider-Man rips the tail off and then hits Carnage with it, and the poison goes into Carnage and Venom, right? And then he realizes another one of Venom and Carnage's weaknesses. It's that how he realizes is that when he takes the rocks out of the body, he sees that a lot of parts of Venom and Carnage are being absolutely demolished by the poison. So he takes no note of that. Then he realizes that the enemy is still there. But he also put some upgrades, and then and then Spider-Man feels a force pushing on the tail. And then he realizes that somehow the enemy made it so that he can call his tail back, and then it could be put back in through nanotechnology. So it could just be caught by and then be attached back on and work again. And then the force gets stronger and stronger. And then we can even see the floor is starting to crack. Like the whole entire floor. But Spider-Man's not letting go. But then he has an idea. He quickly puts a USB drive in one of the exposed slots, which is a virus he made, the spider virus. It allows him full control of whatever he's in, and it gives him everything. And it's really OP. And then he gets it out, and then he pretends like he lost the grip, and then he gets it back. And then he tries to hit him again, but Spider-Man webs the tail into one of the support beams. So now he's stuck. And he tries to rip it out and try to use that thing again, but it barely works. Because Spider-Man used that teal web shooting, really strong. So he's stuck there, And then, want to know what happens? That is one of the few support beams left. The building's about to fall over anyway, so Spider-Man accesses the tail, the poison part, then activates that self-destruct mode. And then it explodes that support beam. And then he quickly accesses the suit again, and then manages to hack into the suit and take full control, master control, you could say, and manages to stop him from moving. So he's just on the floor watching a huge part of the building about to be crumpled on top of him. And that's what happens. And then he falls through the floor, and then he falls through, and he finds a basement. So Spider-Man goes down and quickly punches him in the jaw, and a right hook, just one, and then he goes on the ground bleeding. And then he realizes what he has to do. Not Spider-Man, the enemy. He has to become a whole body of that poison, so nobody can touch him without being affected. Which was a protocol Dr. Octopus was working on, but didn't get to fully work on. And the remains of that project is that it can turn one body part into that poison. Right? So when he's being locked up, he goes to Spider-Man, grabs him, and he's like giving a speech, and Spider-Man doesn't care, but he quickly turns both of his arms into that poison, and it goes into Spider-Man. And then he goes to the ER and stuff, but Spider-Man gets up almost immediately after. And he says that the poison is still in him, and it should be in full effect. But his powers, his genetic powers that allow him to be Spider-Man, have actually learned from this. You know how like our bodies have learned from the bubonic plague and are really resistant to it now? That's what happened. He had been hit enough with that poison to be completely immune to it. Well, to its effects. It is damaging his body, but not much. It's barely damaging his body. It's like the flu, but way less. The most it'll do is actually just make you cough a little. The poison doing its very best to make you hallucinate and stuff, but it's not working because Spider-Man's genes, superpower genes, have evolved to make him immune to it. Even with the upgrade, it only didn't work. Then he realizes that, and then he goes through the device. He quickly downloaded all the data of that suit. Then he realizes that someone named Scarecrow was the one who gave all the upgrades. So he manages to take all the locations, every single location that Scarecrow has gone to, and he manages to even hack into his phone server and download all the data that was remaining. And then he chucks that into an AI finder, and it determines 5 of his most possible locations. He quickly sends undercover Sable, Roxxon, and Oscorp agents there. It's far enough from the site, so if it was rigged with bombs, they wouldn't be affected. Quickly, he also evacuates everyone in those areas, and he quickly goes and investigates. And he finds the one he's in. And Scarecrow tries to do the thing, and he's like, oh, this building is full of bombs, but Sable, Roxxon, and Oscorp already took down the bombs, fully deactivated them. So wanna know what happens? Spider-Man punches the shit out of Scarecrow, yeah. Scarecrow tries to hit Spider-Man with the poison, but it doesn't work. In fact, it actually helps him because Spider-Man's body is worried about the poison, so it makes his reflex even better. So he accidentally did the opposite of... Scarecrow did the opposite of what he wanted to do. And then want to know what he does? He takes the 2 chemical compounds of Scarecrow's fear toxin and Scorpion. Yeah, Scorpion's version of it. And then he quickly modifies both of them to be a lot worse. It would be like how Joker got the gas too, but 10 times worse. So basically what would happen is that how do I explain this? You would die. Even if you survive the nightmare, manage to escape and everything, you would still die. And of course, Spider-Man has the cure, and he's only doing this to scare Scarecrow, and he ejects Scarecrow in a way. and then he is hallucinating and everything. And then he gets a call that, oh, Scarecrow's about to die, come and inject the cure in him. And then he goes in there, and then he puts the cure in, and then he puts it in. He puts into that HIV bag, and then they put it in, and then he quickly leaves because he needs to figure out how he needs to figure out Green Goblin's tech, and how to, like, go against it even more. But then we see a bunch of reports that the hospital Scarecrow was in was broken into. Spider-Man goes and investigates, and then he sees what happens. Apparently, somebody used smoke bombs and shot Scorpion's poison at each of the witnesses and doctors and nurses, and then they went on the ground. But before that, he also took out the camera's electricity, so they're completely defective. And then he took the cure that Scarecrow had, and it was only the bottle's this big. Scarecrow only had to use this much, and he needs the entire bottle to be cured. And want to know what he does? Whoever this person is, apparently when there's a mission that we used to investigate, he gave that to the hospital nurses and stuff like that so they would wake up. But he also injected them with something else. Advanced memory erasers created by him. And it erased all the memories of what happened that night. So there's no witnesses, no security footage. There's barely any evidence. But Spider-Man takes those advanced chemicals, and then he reverse engineers them and figures out how it was made, like what chemicals, and then he runs it into a program that figures out and basically what this program does is that it figures out who's most likely to have those chemicals and who has all those morals and stuff to do this. And the only result it spits out is the Raven Hunter. Because the Raven Hunter has a lot of money. There was also a night before. No, sorry, not a night before. A couple hours before Spider-Man came, a break-in into multiple chemical factories, along with a Oscorp research station that Harry made. So maybe the Raven Hunter broke in, got those chemicals, and then used the lab to make that memory wiper, right? And then he also tries to get the glass that he had the chemicals. Scorpion's toxin to see if it had any clues, and there were no clues. Okay. He tries to gets Scarecrow's body, and then he goes through it and makes sure, and he does everything he can, but he can't find any clues except that the most likely person is the Raven Hunter, right? But then he remembers he can go investigate those broken insights, and he does, right? And there are actually more chemicals stolen. The chemicals that are made out of that memory eraser are there, but way more chemicals were stolen. And then he figures out that there was somebody, whoever it was, hacked into more Harry's research stations and used them. So Spider-Man realizes that whoever did it, the Raven Hunter, whoever it is, didn't just make this memory forget it. They also made more biological weapons. So he realizes that the Raven Hunter may actually be back on the side of evil. And then he it was just trying to take out a possible a friend that he could team up with, but eventually knew would betray him, right? So, and he realizes that he could be making more biological weapons to threaten the city with. But then he realizes something. He quickly gets, he uses that protocol and gets the upgrade that the Raven Hunter gave him, and reverse engineers it and manages to get the location of where it was made. And he finds it, and the Raven Hunter is nowhere to be seen. Except that all of a sudden there's more upgrades, better stuff to weaponry, like guns and stuff, right? And there's also a container for a liquid. And he manages to use all that data, and he finds the location, and he meets up with the Raven Hunter. End of episode 1.